Sex ed. It's either the funniest day of school or the most awkward day of school. You had your kids on one side of the spectrum that already knew about sex, whether it was from family, friends, etc. And then you had the kids on the other side that didn't know anything about it. No matter which side you were on, one thing was certain. On that day, you were about to find out. As a society, we need to do a better job of teaching our kids about sex and informing them of things that they can do or not do, or things that they shouldn't do or could do. We need to make sure that the information that we're giving them is both medically accurate and is given to them in a respectful and purposeful manner. We cannot have this belief that kids will learn about sex on their own, from their friends, or worse, the idea that they just won't do it. I'm going to give you 3 things today that I think need to be fixed with the way we teach sex ed in America. What kid wants to talk to their parents about sex? None. It is probably the most awkward thing you can do, and most kids will not do it. That's why as a society we need to make sure that we all are doing our part to teach kids about this. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, only 24 states and the District of Columbia require that students in public schools receive sex ed. How can we expect our students to make smart and safe decisions when it comes to sex if they're just not being taught anything about it? In the United States, 33 states require that students receive information about HIV and AIDS. However, only 20 states in the US require that any information given to students about sex or HIV and AIDS be medically accurate information. How can we expect students to make safe and smart sex decisions and to be smart with their bodies when whether or not they receive information or any information at all depends solely on where they lived at this point in their lives? Kids will do whatever they want. We've all heard that expression at some point in their life, and it's true. We as college students here at BYU can say that our kids one day won't do whatever they want, we'll teach them to do the right thing, but as we all know here at BYU, people have agency, and you can teach your kids to be well-mannered, respectful, all that stuff, but if they want to do something, they're going to do it. No matter how we try to shelter our kids from sex in today's society, they're going to see it. It's all over society, from commercials, movies, you got your arousing hamburger commercials, you got billboards that kids aren't meant to see, you have the internet. No matter how much you try to stop your kids from seeing these sexual things, they're going to. That's why we need to do a better job of showing our kids this is what you should be doing, this is what you should do at all, this is the age where you should start doing this, if at all, and we must teach our kids the meaning of the word consent. We need to be more sensitive when it comes to how we deliver this sex education. At times, people let their experiences and their personal opinions cloud their judgment and influence what they say to people, and it can have a very bad effect on what is delivered. I'm going to play a video for you now about a girl named Elizabeth Smart from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Right, thank you, Brett. A few days ago, Elizabeth Smart spoke at a conference on human trafficking and answered questions she's been asked for years. Why didn't she scream for help or try to escape? And now some are wondering what role her faith may have played in all of that. Fox 13's Nineveh Dinha joins us in studio tonight. Nineveh.
Oh, Bob, Elizabeth Smart said she felt dirty and filthy after being raped and like a chewed-up piece of gum.
Smart made the comments during a speech about human trafficking at Johns Hopkins University last Wednesday.
One of the questions that is most commonly asked me is, well, why didn't you run away? Why didn't you yell? Why didn't you scream?
Elizabeth Smart was 14 years old when she was kidnapped, raped, and held captive by Brian David Mitchell. It was 2002. More than a decade later, people are still asking her questions. This is her explanation to the audience at Johns Hopkins.
I remember in school one time, I had a teacher who was talking about abstinence. And she said, imagine you're a stick of gum, and when you engage in sex, that's like getting chewed. And then if you do that lots of times, you're going to become an old piece of gum. And who's going to want you after that?
Smart's revelations triggered online comments. LDS author Joanna Brooks writes, traditional Mormon sexual purity lessons contributed to captivity. And another online article's headline, abstinence education teaches rape victims they're worthless, dirty, and filthy.
I was raised in a very religious household, one that taught that sex was something special that only happened between a husband and a wife who loved each other. And that's what I'd been raised, that's what I'd always been determined to follow, that when I got married, then and only then would I engage in sex. And so for that first rape, I felt crushed. Who could want me now? I felt so dirty and so filthy. I understand so easily, all too well, why someone wouldn't run because of that alone.
Now, however grainy and unconnected the video connection was, or the video still has a powerful message to you. When you let your personal opinions on things affect the way you tell someone about something, they have a very negative impact, and it can have a huge impact on the way they feel about themselves and their whole outlook on society. Jenny Springler, a public relations officer, gives us 4 things we can do to promote a safe and environment for topics like sex ed. These things are being responsible for feelings, making connections, compiling questions, answering them together, and the most important thing is to prepare yourself. We as a society today need to be more responsible for sex ed. We can no longer afford to think that kids will just learn on their own or that they won't do it. We must ensure that the information that our youth are receiving is both medically accurate as well as being delivered to them in a respectful way with the purpose behind it. A good example of this that goes along with the video is what has happened at BYU recently with the sort of shaming of sexual violence victims. That's a good example of what can happen if you let your judgment or your opinions get in the way of how you deal with the situation. We need to be very careful and respectful in how we deal with anything with sex, whether it's sex ed, whether it's HIV and AIDS, sexual orientation, or victims of things like rape and sexual assault. Thanks.